Hello, and welcome to this video that will showcase the new work order functionalities found within the Hector application as part of our operations module. Hello, my name is Joey Montalbo, and we'll be spending the next few minutes together taking a look at what exactly can this work order do for you and your organization. So the first thing that you'll notice within the Hector environment is that there's a new operations menu containing the work order section. There's also a resources section where we've added customers, vendors, and contacts, which will allow you to set up some customers for your work orders. Work orders can also be created for internal users as well. Finally, in the settings section, you'll find an operations submenu where you can navigate and change the settings of your work orders feature. Let's start with that because it's important to understand what's under the hood before we go out and create our first work order. So in a previous video, you've seen what the purchase order section can bring to you and your organization, but in this video, we're going to take a look at the work order. So the first thing you need to know is that you can set a prefix for all the work orders that are going to be created within the Hector application. So in my case, I chose WO, but you could choose something else for your business. Then the next step is going to be the number start. You can start the range of all the numbers found within the Hector application for the work orders, meaning you could start your work orders at the 10,000 or 1,000 or 100 number range instead of them starting at the number 1. Once you've set this value and created your first work order, it's important to know that you won't be able to change it afterwards, which is why it's grayed out for me here. Then your default terms, you could, for example, say that all work orders that are billable will need to be paid within the first 30 days. So paid within net 30. Then you can set a default labor rate because within work orders, you're going to be able to assign some assets, but you're also going to be able to assign some hours. So very important that if you want for that to be filled in by default, you'll be able to set it up here. You can also set the default billable status. So if most of your work orders are being done for internal users and you don't necessarily want to bill those users, you can leave that as unchecked. But if you're doing most of your work orders for customers, external, then you might want to check this as you're probably going to be billing those customers for that work. And finally, you can allow your users, so someone with the profile and the permissions that you want limited permission for a user, but you still want them to be able to create a work order, for example, on a problematic asset or an issue with a room, or even create a work order off of a loaner. This checkbox is going to allow your users with limited permissions to do so. Like the purchase orders, you can set up approvals. So you can require that work orders be approved by someone from your team before they're ready to be sent out to either the external or the internal customers. So in this case, we'll have it turned on so you guys can see what it looks like. Once we've turned on approval, well, for sure we want to make sure that we set up an approval group that's going to be responsible and receive notifications to approve those work orders. So talking about notifications, you'll see that there's a few notifications we can set up within the application. One is a notification if a work order is created by a user. This is very important because when users are going to be creating work orders, they'll be doing so in a limited function, and you might want some members of your team to be made aware when a work order has been created by a user within your organization. You can also set up notifications when an approval request has been sent in, when an approval has been confirmed or rejected, when you've assigned work to a member of your team, so that member of the team will receive an email to let them know they've been assigned work. And you can also receive some notifications once per day if the expected start date for a work order is in the past, or if the expected finish date is also in the past. And finally, like most other screens within Hector, you can change the column visibility, the name, the order to make it fit your organization. Second place we're going to take a look at is the customer section. Within the customer section, you can create new customers, and we see here we have 2 existing customers in our system. When you create a new customer, you're going to be filling in some of the information that you're very used to filling out throughout any other application you've used in the past. So you'll be filling in a name, a description, a street address, a city, phone, email, what's the currency, their website, their default language, are they taxable or not by default, as well as any kind of logo that you have for that customer. You could upload it to make it easier to spot it with regards to other customers in the system. So essentially, once your customer is created, you can start to use it and start to assign work orders against that customer. So if we take a look at customer ABC1234, we can see that we can set up contacts for that customer. We can also see the work order history, as well as any assets that might have been assigned directly to that customer and the history of those transactions. We have a glance of all this information within our customer card. Final section, the reason why you're probably watching this video, let's take a look at the work orders. So when you arrive on the work order screen, you're going to see a lot of information. But what's important to know is that work orders follow a specific process within the application as they get assigned and the work starts on those work orders. So when I look at the work orders, I can see that there's 4 that belong to me, where I'm the owner. There's 7 that are open in total in my organization. There's 1 that's in a draft status, so it's not ready to be sent out or approved or be reviewed by anybody. We can see if there's any work orders pending approval. So if somebody's waiting for somebody else to approve their work order, we would see those here. We can see any of new work orders. So these would be work orders that have been approved or not necessarily completed or have been assigned or are not in progress. So these are really work orders that are waiting for a specific moment in time in order for the work to be performed. The difference between a new and an assigned work order is going to be an assigned is going to be set up for somebody within your organization. So somebody might be creating the work orders, but not necessarily the person that's going to be doing the actual work. So an example of that we saw earlier is if the work order is opened by a user within your organization, that user is not probably going to be the one that's going to do the actual work. So you're going to want to assign that work order to a member of your staff. In progress work orders are anything that's, of course, in progress. So the work is actually being performed right now by an individual in your team. Work orders can take multiple days, like they could take an hour, 30 minutes. It's really up to you to decide how long work order is going to take, and the system's going to allow you to track that information. Any work order that's late, either it was scheduled to begin at a specific date and it has passed that date, or it was scheduled to finish at a specific date and it has passed that date as well, will show up as being late in this section. Finally, we also can see that there's been 2 work orders that have been finished by the person who was assigned that work order, and those work orders can be reviewed by someone from your team before being closed out, which is pretty much the final step in the work order process flow. So when a work order is finished, it might be a good time to start thinking about billing your customer, making sure that someone's reviewed the work and everything is per it's supposed to be. So within my work orders, we see here that we have 4 work orders that are currently open. Let's go out and create a new one. When I create a new work order, I see the system has assigned me a number automatically in draft state. And then I get to choose, is this work order for somebody internal to my organization or external? So let's choose a customer. And let's grab ABC1234. That's the customer we saw a little bit earlier in the video. Then the owner. For now, the system automatically assigns this work order to me, but I could assign it to somebody else within my team if I knew that that's the person that's going to be doing the work against that work order. We can also choose a priority for that work order, so low, medium, high, urgent, in order to establish what are the work orders that need to be performed first, and then second, third, and so on. We can enter a description for a work order, so what's the actual work that we're looking to do for the customer. So we could say repair the customer's vehicle, and then the instructions could be specific, tailored to this work order. So we could be saying that we need to change the valve, open the hood, crank the gear, and so on. So we're setting up specific instructions for a team so that they know exactly what's the work they need to perform, and then they'll be able to perform that work. And then here we have our default payment terms. I hadn't saved when I was in the settings screen, so that's why they loaded the previous payment terms. So a customer might have sent us a purchase order or any kind of documentation that they want to show that they've purchased or ordered this work. So we could put that reference number in, ABC. The order date is the date that the work order was created, or we took the order from the customer. But it could be that the work itself is going to take place during a specific time frame, for example, over the course of 1 week. And this is where we would set up the expected start and finish date. We can mark this work order as being billable, so we know that we're going to need to bill this customer for the work that's performed. There is also the possibility to add documents, so you could add the purchase order from your customer here, or any technical information that you would need to capture while performing this work. Next step, when you add a line, you can go in and choose whether you're going to be adding a line of type hours, asset, or directly going to be doing some work on a place. So in my case, we can start with hours. So we're going to say repair the vehicle. We anticipate this is going to take roughly 4 hours at a rate of $75 an hour, and we could add a note should we want to. Now we have the option. We want to save in new or save in close. Save in close is going to return us to the work order. If we save in new, we'll be brought into, we'll have the possibility to add another line to this work order, which is what we're going to do so that we can explore all three entities together today. Second step, we can add an asset to work order. So you might need to add some tooling, some consumable materials that you'll need to perform this work order. You might be adding different equipment that's going to be required for this work order. All of this information, you can do so by looking for assets within the Hector application. So if I'm looking for example, I'll be using some cables to perform the work against this work order. I could come in and grab some cables. Say my cables are in good condition. I'm going to be billing these cables to the customer. I could choose to reserve these cables for this work order so that when the work order is set to being as in progress, nobody else within my organization is going to have access to this specific asset or these specific cables. I could update the next maintenance date for these cables. In this case, since this is a consumable item, probably going to just come in and consume them against the work order when I've completed the work. So the idea here is that I'll be using these 3 cables when I perform the work, and they will not exist anymore once I've completed this work order. I can go in and save in new, and we're going to add one final piece to our work order, which is we're going to add a room. So we could say, for example, that I'll need to rent a room to perform the work for the vehicle. So I'll be adding the red room to my work order in order to bill the customer for this work. Once I've completed this, I can save and close. And now we see the 3 lines that I've added to my work order. So the first line was the repair the vehicle. So I've added 4 hours at a rate of $75 an hour. Then I've added some cables that I'll be consuming during the work, so we can see that they're consumable. And finally a room where I'll be of a price of 100. What you need to know within a work order is that when you're adding a room, it doesn't necessarily have to be a room that you'll be using to perform the work. You could choose to perform a work order against a room. So let's say you're going to paint a room. Let's say you're going to repair something that's in the room. You could add the room to the work order for your worker to know what are we talking about, what are we going to be using, where does he need to go to perform this work. So once I've set up my work order, I can go out and save. And what's going to happen here is Hector's going to start and save this work order we see it has a low priority, it's in the draft status. I can go out ahead and request the approval from someone in my team so that they can go out and approve this work order so that I can begin the work. So in this case, we see that my worker now is in that pending approval status. Since my user can also approve work orders, I could go in here and approve the work or reject the work. And if I reject the work order goes back to the requester. If we approve the work, we'll be asked to leave a note, which is optional. I just go out and save. And now that work order is new, it's ready to be worked on, or at least assigned and set in progress, which is probably the next steps I have. I can either assign this to someone in my team, or if I'm the one that's going to be doing the work, I can set it as being in progress right now. I can also print this work order. That's pretty cool. I can have an example of a work order where I can send this to my customer for them to review and approve before I actually start to do the work. So within this work order form, we're going to see that we have the instruction, the customer itself. If they had an address, we'd have the address here, the instructions, the labor description, the material description. So we're using the cables, we'll have a red room, and then the customer can go in and sign and confirm that they want the work to begin on this work order. But we can also email it to them directly or print it and send it out. So in this example, let's just go out and set this work order as being in progress. So here we see repair the customer's vehicle. We have our items, we have the state, we see the priority, and we could actually start the work. Well, the work has started, so there's nothing else we need to tell Hector. But once we've completed the work, so let's say a few days have passed, I've painted the room or repaired the vehicle, I can go out and finish that work order. So when I'm ready to finish the work order, I'm going to have a screen that looks like this. I have my line number 1 where I have the quantity and price, and I can either set this as being completed or canceled. I could cancel essentially a work order or a specific line on a work order. I can then use up my cables. So we see here that we have some 2 cables. I can go in ahead and consume those 3 cables. And then I can see that I have 1 room, which I can either cancel or complete. So once I've completed these different steps, I can go in and save. Once I've saved my work order, we can see that it's moved to the finished status. If I go in and check the finished status, I see that I repaired the vehicle. I had some cables assigned to this work order, and I have my red room that's all completed. The last step I could do is for somebody in my team to go in and review this work and then close it out, bill the customer, or take any additional steps required around this work order. So once this has been finished and completed, there's a few areas that I want to show you within the application. The first one is within the locals or the room section. We're going to take a look at how did this look like in the red room. So if we take a look at our red room, we have now 1 work order that's assigned to this red room. And what's interesting about this is that had I created a work order, for example, to paint this room, then we would have essentially a list of all the work that's been performed within this room throughout the lifetime of the room. So this is very interesting if we want to keep a history of when's the last time we performed some maintenance work against the room. It's also true for any assets that we might have used. So if we've used an asset like a tool and we wanted to have some tracking of how many work orders have we completed with that specific tool, then we would also have access to that information. Same thing as our cables. We saw here that there's been 3 cables that were consumed against that specific work order. So these cables are now within the consume section of Hector. So we know that these cables have been used up as part of that specific work order. And then, of course, the hours themselves are not necessarily trackable within the application, but you could for sure print those out within the different reports that we have on the operations module. 2 more things that we want to take a look at. We're about 20 minutes into this video. one thing I want to show you guys is that you can create a work order directly for a room or any kind of place that you have within your environment. So we could come in here, create a work order against this room, and automatically Hector is going to set up as the first line of this work order as being that specific room. So then we can choose a user, a customer, set up the description instructions, and go in and save that work order, and we'll have a brand new work order against that room directly from the application. We can also do that for an asset. So if I come in here, I have that access to create a work order for this specific asset. If I do so, then the difference between the previous work order and this one is that instead of being a room, it's going to be my asset that's going to be set up directly within this work order, ready to be worked on by a member of my team. And the last thing, if you have access to the loaners module within the application, and for example, your users are allowed to create work orders for any workers that are found within the system, your users, when they connect to the environment, they're going to see the list of equipment that they've loaned, and they're going to have the option to report a problem. So if they had an issue with a room, or if they had an issue with any of the items that are found within their loaner, they can go in and report a problem against those loaners, and that's going to create a work order for the people within your team to work on. So if I do that, go out and report a problem, because I have full access to the work order section, I see all of the fields. But your user would only see the priority as well as the description where they can enter something that's wrong. And the system's going to automatically add those two problematic items from the loaner to their work order, ready to be saved and worked on by a member of your team. So through this 20-ish something meeting, we've seen really how far and how useful the work order module can be for your team, can be for your organization. We've seen how it can add value and cut down the time it takes for some work to be assigned within your organization, for some work to be performed by members of your team. We saw that we can have a complete tracking of all the work orders that have been performed for a specific customer, on a specific room, or any of the assets that have been used for these work orders. So if you want to know more how this module can help your organization solve some of its challenges, then you'll want to look below in the comments, right above the comment section. You're going to see that we've posted information on how to reach us, our website, or any other information that you might need to get this successfully set up in your environment. So the last thing I'm going to ask you guys is to subscribe to our channel. We release videos every week, either of new features, upcoming features, how-tos, how you can get the maximum amount of value from your Hector instance. And hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video. If you think work orders can add value for your business, don't hesitate. We'll be happy to show you these features within a demonstration with our team. And lastly, I want to tell you guys, thanks for watching and have a great day, and hopefully see you guys on some other videos. So thanks again and take care.